Good morning. It's my second time coming out here this morning. The first time I realized I forgot my heart rate monitor. So I had to go drive back home and get it because I'm definitely gonna need a heart rate monitor today so I can do a MAF test. All right, 5 miles on the dot, finished the MAF test. Today's MAF test was not a traditional one. I wasn't on a track today. I picked kind of like the flattest spot out and back that I could find, which ended up giving me a little bit of an uphill on the way out and a little bit of a downhill on the way back. And then, yeah, so let's see what the numbers are. Average heart rate for the entire run was 146 beats per minute. Average pace for the entire run, 8 minutes 22 seconds per minute. And let's see how I did on each individual mile in terms of just the heart rate. So pretty good. I was a little hot. 145 for mile 1, 146, 147, 147, 146. So not bad. Let's see, what were the times? So the times were 8:35, 8:46 for that like second uphill mile, and then 8:13, 8:07, and 8:01 for the last three. So we'll see if we can get on Strava and do some grade adjusted paces and see kind of what that translates to. And then when we get back to the house, we'll compare to see how it stacks up to the last MAF test, which was quite a while ago. So we're back at the house now, and I've had a chance to take a look at the data on Strava. So the grade adjusted pace for this MAF test, August 6, 2020, the numbers were 8:22, 8:25, 8:15, 8:12, and 8:03. So kind of condensing in the ranges, because I did have a little bit of an uphill and a little bit of a downhill, about 100 feet change in grade from kind of like the lowest to the highest point. So it kind of bunches my numbers together a little bit closer, which makes the whole MAF test make a little bit more sense. So let's compare that to the other MAF tests I've done. And I've been training this way using like my MAF heart rate number or Maffetone number since late October. And for some reason, this has only been my third MAF test. You're supposed to do it a lot more regularly, but I just don't find it all that necessary. And I feel like most of my runs are kind of shooting for using that MAF number as like my speed limit or my effort limit anyway. So in a lot of senses that I'm still at the point in my Maffetone training where my everyday runs are MAF tests in a way of speaking. Although we'll talk about that a little bit further and how I've kind of progressed a little bit beyond that point. So let's go to my first MAF test, which was back in December 8th, 2019, which was about 500 miles in from my Maffetone training. The numbers from that day were 9:05, 8:39, 8:39, 8:37, and 8:33. That was up at the track up on Montrose, or between Montrose and Wilson. I call it Montrose track. Some people call it the Wilson track. I'm not sure what it's called. Up there in Chicago. So that was 500 miles after I started training in this way. When I first started out training with Maffetone, I was doing a lot of run walking. Miles were frequently, I mean, the first couple of weeks were rough, like 13-minute miles. Then it got to kind of be around like 10 and a half, 11-minute miles, just from like a day-to-day basis, not even doing a MAF test, just trying to string a mile or two together without walking. So that progress I felt was pretty good. Today's test was much different and a big improvement. So the same level of cardiac effort is giving me this much of a difference in terms of pace, in terms of what my body can do while working kind of the same level of difficulty. So really promising. Here's the other thing though. I did one other test that was in March 21st, kind of like right before everything shut down. I think that was like the weekend before everything like officially closed. But that weekend, a lot of things had already canceled, like the NBA season had canceled, the March Madness had canceled, like all sorts of things were happening. On that day, I was also up at the track. I did have some other racing shoes on, like I did have racing shoes on today. And the paces from that day were 8:03, 8:12, 8:04, 7:57, and 8:02. So faster than my times were today, but kind of in the same range, especially when you compare some of like the later miles, which I kind of give more weight than the earlier miles due to the nature of this test. Something that I've noticed kind of on all my tests is that the typical like expected like progression from a MAF test is that like your first 2 miles should be your faster ones, and then as you're getting more tired running at that same like interval intensity for 5 miles, you should be getting slower. I'm usually not getting slower, I'm usually getting faster. And so one of the things I think that I need to work on is making sure I do a better warm-up if I'm going to do this test again. I don't find it like terribly useful personally in the way that I've been training under Maffetone. So like that's something that I can certainly tweak. The other thing is there's a difference in the surfaces that I think can have some effect. A nice bouncy track surface versus the pavement and crushed limestone that I was on today, or for the August 6th test, can have some difference. Not as substantial of a difference as I think that I'm seeing in terms of how not different my paces are, but I would expect that the times would be a little bit better if I were on a track. And the third thing that I would kind of talk about in terms of why these numbers are different or aren't as different as I think they could be that for the first test, the one in December, I was in a high mileage phase. I was running 80-mile weeks. I think that MAF test came in the week 3 of like a 4-week span of 80-mile weeks. So that's pretty high mileage. The March 21st test, that came when I was in not peak fitness, but pretty close. Remember, it was March 21st, so about a month out from the Boston Marathon. So I was in pretty good shape, a very high level of fitness there. So I think that can have some effect, which in theory shouldn't really affect your Maffetone performance all that much, because under Maffetone, the idea is you can run all your miles at that Maffetone number or lower. I think that's like strictest, purest Maffetone. I mean, even purest, the strictest Maffetone in his book, Maffetone talks about doing some sorts of speed work and race-specific training. But I think the way that most people kind of understand Maffetone is that you just run that 145 beats per minute or whatever your number would be, or easier for all of your runs except for like your races. I think that's an oversimplification, but I know that's how a lot of people think of it. But in any event, that March 21st date, I was in kind of very close to peak condition. And then in this one for August 6th, I'm still recovering. I'm in a recovery phase. I thought I was near the end of it. I think I might extend that for a little while longer, just give my body a little bit more of a chance to bounce back from that Heritage Trail run, the 30-mile run, where it wasn't, like a race level of effort, but it was a pretty big run, and I put a lot into it. So still kind of coming back from it. My legs feel good, but sometimes just thinking, I feel like, oh, maybe I'm not quite ready to really get back into another training block. So applying that to like where I'm at level of fitness wise for this MAF test, that could also account for it. I'm not sure. This also could just be inadvertent anecdotal kind of experimental test variance. Who knows about that? I'm not sure like how repeatable MAF results are. I mean, the idea would be that because you're running 5 miles, that gives you the sense you can kind of figure out where your level of fitness is there with the 5 different miles. But I wonder if I did it like tomorrow, how different would it be? Not going to really worry about that. For a lot of people with Maffetone, like every day is kind of like a Maffetone test because you're slowing down to fall within that heart rate range. I think that over the last couple of months, what I've been able to do is like, I finally got to the point where, all right, an easy day run feels consistent with what my heart rate is telling me is easy. So I was kind of like the Maffetone number in terms of what that defines as easy, and my body is what defines as easy are matching. I feel like lately I've gotten to the point where it's not quite as significant of a difference where it's like I couldn't run at my Maffetone number every day because that would just be too hard. But what I consider an easy run now these days is probably closer to like 8:45, anywhere between like 8:30 and 8:45 is what I consider an easy run. I probably should be running easy runs a little bit even slower than that, but that's kind of where I've been ending up. And I feel like that being well under my 145 beats per minute, I'm usually at like 140 to 135 in terms of that. So being able to be running easy runs at under that like Maffetone like exertion limit, I feel like is additional progress. My ultimate goal with Maffetone training is to be able to be one of those people that says, you know, if I ran at that Maffetone level every day, it would be too hard because it's just too fast. Which would then mean to me that like the cardiovascular system is getting much stronger and is even stronger than the musculoskeletal system. And I think that that kind of like level of fitness is going to take someone like me another couple years, I think. To get to that point. And it might seem like a really long time to devote yourself to like a specific like kind of style of training. But the way I see it is that there's not really a lot of downside to it for me at this point of my progress, because what I feel like is just doing a lot of easy runs corresponds to a Maffetone style of training for the most part. And so I feel like it lines up. I will probably add in more speed work whenever I'm doing any kind of race specific training. And once I kind of feel better from this recovery phase, we'll get to like the next phase of what I'll train for next. And I think that's going to have a lot more speed work in it, still staying within kind of an 80-20 approach. So I'll still definitely be doing the vast majority of my running at Maffetone, or at that low heart rate range for easy work. So I think I'll still call it Maffetone style training, although I'm not sure that it is. I'm going to call it that and consider it that. So like to continue training along this way is going to feel cardiac wise to me at this point similar to someone that's not Maffetone training, if that kind of makes sense. So like I feel like there's no risk anymore at this point. So we'll see how that goes. If you have any questions about this MAF test or what I've been doing with Maffetone, I forgot to put disclaimers out. I'm certainly not an expert at low heart rate training or Maffetone training. I've been doing it for a while. I've been researching it. These are my thoughts on it and how I've been using it for my running. So I'm happy to share whatever I've learned with you guys.
Dad?
Yes?
Can you be buddy?
The dog's fine where he is, hon. Okay? Do you want him to go inside with you? Okay. You want him to stay out here? All right, buddy, sit. Buddy, sit, please. Stay. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hope you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?